welcome to the next episode of the Klingberg Wing Mark II development. I'm Raul Klingberg, your host. Today I have a quick building tip for you. Let's talk a little bit about Velcro. When you have a transportable aircraft or something else where you have to hold things together for a short period of time, take them apart for transportation, Velcro is the name of the game. Like I have this backrest here, and the backrest has to come off in order to fold up the cockpit structure, the pilot's cage. So it's attached to the frame with Velcro. And you see one half the Velcro here on the strut, the other half the Velcro on the backrest. Now, if you've ever worked with Velcro, you know that stuff is slippery as all get out. It's basically made of polypropylene. There's two sides, a hook side and a loop side. And polypropylene, I don't know of hardly any adhesives that really stick to polypropylene. Now you can get Velcro in two basic forms. It's bare on the back, it's meant to be sewn on, and you can buy other stuff that has sticky back on it. You peel off the backing and you can stick it down. This is great for like hanging pictures or something else, I don't know. I use it here and there occasionally. Sometimes I use it, the sticky side, to hold the components in place temporarily while I sew. And they can come in handy for that. But what it doesn't do is something structural like this. And I call this structural because significant loads get put on this backrest. As you lean against it, it wants to slide up on the frame, it wants to collapse inside, and if you're using a sticky back Velcro, this stuff, when it hits high heat, if it's in its trailer or sitting around in the sun, this actually softens up some, and it actually softens over time. And it doesn't have particularly good lap shear strength. So as you put a load on something, it just slowly slides out of position, gets extra gooey, never really sticks, and then you try to glue it back down with something else, never works. Never sticks solidly in place. So today's tip is on how to install Velcro so it actually stays in place. And you can use this methodology for any substrate. Composites, wood, aluminum, steel. As long as you choose the right adhesives, you're good to go. And I'm going to put up a series of pictures here next to me where you can see how I did this. And the key to this whole trick is to sew a strip of fiberglass onto the back side of the Velcro. And when you do this, the fiberglass provides a substrate that the epoxy will actually stick to. And what happens is the epoxy actually, via capillary action, works its way into the holes where you have stitched. And it permeates the thread that you use for stitching. So you get a really, really good bond that way. So the fiberglass is sewn to the Velcro, and then it gets bonded in place. And as long as you choose the right epoxy for your substrate, choose an epoxy for composite like I have here, or wood, or some type of metal. And those will each be a slightly different answer in terms of the epoxy that you choose. Now the best way to go about this is if you have woven fiberglass tape that is the same width of the Velcro. That is the best way to do it. I didn't have it for this particular job. So what you see in the photo here is I have taken an extra wide piece of just basic woven fiberglass cloth, stitched it in place, and then used scissors to cut off the excess on the edges. And the stitching will keep the edges from unraveling while you spread the epoxy. And what I did in the next step is I got everything laid out. I'm using 5-minute epoxy for this job because that's good enough to take these loads on the backrest. And I do each side separately. I didn't do both pieces at the same time. I'm not that fast. But 5-minute epoxy is enough to get one of them in place. And what I've done is I've taken the strip of Velcro, and it's actually the hook side. If you're going to glue it down, you should glue down the hook side if you have a choice of one or the other. Sometimes you have to glue down both sides, but in this case, I'm gluing down one side, the other side's on fabric, so I used the loop side on the fabric, and the hook side gets glued down. And that's because as Velcro wears out, what actually wears out is the loop side, and the hook side holds up much longer period of time. So, and then once I get the fiberglass sewn on the back side, and I'll put up another picture, let's see, over here. It's all backwards here in my viewfinder. That was fun. And this picture shows how I've laid the Velcro down on a 3-inch wide piece of duct tape, and you could use just about any tape. I probably should have used painter's tape for this job. And I've put it on there so that I can quickly transfer it to the surface and rub down the tape before the epoxy cures. If you're using a longer cure epoxy, you can just wet out the fiberglass cloth, transfer it to the spot where you need to glue it down, and then tape it in place, or use some other temporary fastening method until the epoxy cures. But in this case, I just decided to wet it out right on the piece of tape and transfer it over. And the 5-minute epoxy will wet out that fiberglass cloth in just about the right amount of time. The 2 strips that I'm putting on are 24 inches long. And then I transferred it over on to the surface here. And that surface, of course, I sanded it first. I'm going to put a picture up here. Took all the paint off, made sure I had a rough surface that the epoxy is going to stick to, and then wiped it down with alcohol to make sure there's no greasy fingerprints on there. And I transferred the tape and the Velcro with the epoxy impregnated fiberglass on the backside right onto the tubing, taped it in place, and 5 minutes later, bada boom, bada bing, the job is done. And it is glued on there permanently. This is never going to move. It is a great solution. And you can do this just about anywhere. And I assure you that will glue down the Velcro permanently. You'd have to use chisel and knife and so forth to get it off. I used this methodology on my first glider, and I've used it in other places, and it holds up for years. It will stay like that. It will be bonded on there for as long as the Velcro is good for, probably exceeding the life of your aircraft or other thing that you're using. So great methodology. You might think, hey, I can just put epoxy on the back side of this thing, and epoxy will seep in and it'll bond it down. Guess again. I've tried that several times, vacuum bagged it. I've done all sorts of things. It just peels right off. It has a tendency to float up to the top of the epoxy, and it's gone. As soon as you get an edge caught, whoop, you peel it up. This will never peel loose. So best method for gluing down Velcro permanently, and especially good for aircraft applications. So I hope you enjoyed that little tip today. Hope you have a chance to use it, and hope that makes your projects go a little bit better for you. So thanks for coming today, and as I always say, fly safe and bye for now.